The windows and doors that you see in this very simple Revit model represent the unprotected openings that most building codes seek to limit for many reasons, but primarily because they're the vulnerable spots in the facade where in the event of a fire, you're most likely to have flames jumping from one building to the next. And in this video, what I want to do is demonstrate how we can use Revit to show our compliance with those code limits. And we want to do this in a visual manner. Quite often in the drawing set, you'll see that this is done with a lot of text and a lot of tables. And we're going to be working towards this type of an approach where we incorporate some of the graphic elements like the elevation views and the tags, and then we gather all of that information together in a table like this, which is done with a schedule. And most importantly, we want to have over here, as you can see on the right, a representation of the percentage of unprotected openings on each facade and demonstrate how that complies with the code requirements. I'm going to start with a view here of the 3D model, and this is just to point out that on each of the facades, the south, east, north, and west, I've got different fire compartments. So the different colors just represent the different parts of the facade where I want to have some different calculations to determine area. And then within each of those fire compartments, the red, the blue, and the green here, I'll have a different calculation here for the unprotected openings within them. So as I transition from a 3D view to a 2D view, you can see here that I've got these two-dimensional filled regions, and I've created a custom filled region type for each of them. On this particular facade, I've got 3 fire compartments, so 3 different types, and then a 4th filled region type to represent the unprotected openings. And you can see that I've used that same type in each of those 3 fire compartment filled regions. So as I move around my model and do the south and the east and the north and the west, I might not need to use all 3 of those fire compartments. You can see here that on my west facade, for example, I've just got a single fire compartment, and then within that, I've got that same type, the unprotected openings, which I would use regardless of how many fire compartments that I had. So having done that, I would then populate my sheet, as you can see here, with the different elevation views. Notice that I've got these all set to 1 to 200 scale so that they fit nicely on the sheet. And no desire here to represent any of the other details on the elevations. I just want to have that area of the fire compartment represented with a little region inside to represent the unprotected openings within them. So there's a fair bit of work involved in getting these onto the sheet in a nice organized fashion, as you can see. I'm not going to go over the step-by-step process to get there, but I just want to point out that having done that, I would then create this custom type, and I will walk you through step-by-step on how to create that, that tag. It will describe the area of each of those filled regions, and then we can pull information from those tags into our schedule so that we get a representation here of all the crucial data, including, of course, a representation of the percentage of unprotected openings within each of those fire compartments. That's the overview. So I'll just kind of wade into this and describe what the first few steps would look like in this process. I don't want to do every step of this because it's going to be a fairly long process, and I don't want to unnecessarily lengthen this video with things that are fairly simple. If you need a bit of a review on that, I would just go to the Annotate tab and select Region and choose Filled Region. That'll put me into sketch mode, of course. And what I want to do is create 4 different custom filled region types. I'm going to create a fire compartment 1, fire compartment 2, 3, and then one just called unprotected openings. Now, as for what graphics I use within those, it's really just personal preference. You can see here that for my unprotected openings, I've just chosen to do just a simple representation here of a white color with a thick black outline. Choose whichever you like. I'll just kind of exit out of here and just kind of go back to my finished product here, and you'll be able to see that I've somewhat randomly chosen different fill patterns or fill region patterns to represent the different faces. I'm really just concerned with showing a differentiation between those different faces. But as for what particular pattern, parallel, crosshatch you use, that's entirely up to you. Having done that, then I would proceed to create the custom tag, and that's where we'll go next. So when the filled regions are complete, we're ready to add the tags. And although these look like fairly generic tags, they've got some special properties in them. So we're going to make some brand new generic tags, and we do that by clicking here on the File menu and then dropping down to New, and from there dropping down to Annotation Symbol. And in our library, we're going to select metric generic annotation.rft, and it's located within our family files here, our family templates. And I've just selected English for language, and then within that, the annotations folder. So metric generic annotation.rft, we'll open that up, and you'll see a pretty simple display here of just 2 reference planes and then this little bit of red text. We're going to select that red text, And when we do that, we're going to drop over here in the upper left to family, category, and parameters. And we're going to change our family category from generic annotations to floor tags. And having done that, we're now ready to add the label. And we do that by just clicking on the Create tab. And then over here towards the right, we're going to select Label. And we'll make the initial click for the placement. And when we do that, we'll see the Edit Label window pop up. And we just want to add 2 category parameters here. We're going to select area and then just click on the green arrow to send it over to the right. And then we're also going to add a special section here for comments. And we'll send that over to the right as well. We'll click OK, and you'll see an initial display of what that might look like. But before we do anything with that, we're just going to make another little edit here and select the label and actually copy it to the clipboard. So just Control-C. And having done that, we're going to select the red text, and we're going to change the family category to Detail Items Tags. So select the red text, go back here to this button here that displays the little folder for family category and parameters, and then we're going to grab floor tags here and change it to Detail Item Tags. And having done that, we'll click OK, and we can now hit Control-V to paste the copied label back into our file. We're going to delete this original one, so just select it and hit delete, and then we're going to drag this back closer to the intersection of the 2 reference planes. And having that now done that, we can select the red text and we can just hit delete. Okay, so we're going to click on that one more time, and then we're just going to select Edit Type. So remember, when you select these labels, there are properties that control the label properties, and then there's also some properties that just control the way that they're displayed. So that's what we're doing here by just clicking on Edit Type. And within this is just kind of personal preference, but I'm just going to turn the border on. I'm going to change the background to transparent, and then to match the rest of my drawing, I'm just going to choose the font. And I'll use one that I like to use just because it's nice and condensed and doesn't occupy too much space, and it's less likely to create some unnecessary clutter. I'll set the text size to maybe something a little smaller, 2.5 should do it. And I'll click OK. And then again, I'll just try to get this close to that intersection of the 2 reference planes. And then I'll just do a quick file, save as, family of course, and I'll just put this on my desktop. And I'll call this my metric generic area tag. I'll hit enter, and then I can just click here on load into project and choose the appropriate RVT file. So having completed the custom tag, I'm now back in my RVT file, and you can see that I'm in my elevation view. So this won't work if you're on the sheet. So just make sure you're in one of your elevation views. And to place the tag, all I have to do is just go to my Annotate tab. And like I normally would, I'll just select the Tag by Category tool. And then when I do that, you can see as I hover over these different filled regions, and I'll just click to place it. And as I do that, you can see that in addition to the indication here of the area, so I'll just do that for all 3 of my different fire compartments. There's also a description here of what the fire compartment is. And the reason why it's displaying that is because when I created the filled regions, I added this section here, which is just done manually. You can see that there's a comment section here for the filled region, and I just entered that this particular area, filled region, was fire compartment 2. This is fire compartment 3, and then I've got this one down below, and this is just fire compartment 1. So that information displays, and that just kind of helps me to see what the area refers to. And in the next step, we'll add some additional parameters so that when we select the filled regions, we can add some information in the properties window, and that eventually will end up in our schedule and give that full readout of information, which will eventually lead to a description of the percentage openings. So I've loaded in the custom tag, and you can see that I've placed them on all the elevations. I've got them organized reasonably. There's going to be a lot of clutter there, so just take some time to make sure that your tags are all properly organized and nicely legible, just to make the life on the viewer a little bit easier. And having done that, now we'll add some shared parameters and some project parameters. So we'll go to the Manage tab, and over here towards the left, we'll click on Shared Parameters. I'll see a little prompt here about a missing text file. Don't worry about that. When you see the Edit Shared Parameters window pop up, all we want to do here is just click Create, and we're going to create just a simple text file. And I'm going to call this Test Code limiting distance. I'll hit enter, and now that I've created that text file where all this information is going to be stored, I can proceed with creating first a new group, and I'll just call this my limiting distance elevations. And now that I've created the group, I can actually create some shared parameters. So I'm just going to click here on the new parameters button, and I'm going to create 5 of these. The first one is going to be called facade, and this is going to help me distinguish whether it's east, south, north, or west. Under discipline, I'm just going to specify or leave it as common, and under length of parameter, I'm going to make this a text parameter. I'll click OK, and I'm going to repeat the process for exposing building area. And this is just code lingo for the area of that fire compartment. This is also going to be a common discipline. And then under type of parameter, I'm going to select area. I'll click OK, and then I'm going to move to the third one, which is going to be limiting distance. And this will represent the distance of my facade or my fire compartment from the property line or from whatever the reference point would be for determining that percentage of allowable openings. So limiting distance, the discipline is going to be common once again, and this is going to be a text type of parameter. I'll click OK. I'll click new again. This is going to be allowable openings, and this will be where I enter manually from the code the percentage that was allowed based on whatever the limiting distance would be. So allowable openings, and once again common, and this is also going to be a text parameter. I'll click OK, and then I'll add the last one, which is going to be a rather wordy one, proposed unprotected opening area. This will also be common, and it's going to be an area parameter. So I'll click OK. Now that I've added those 5, I can click OK. This just completes the creation of those 5 shared parameters. And the next step is to go back to the Manage tab and click on Project Parameters so that those shared parameters become part of this actual RVT file. There's an extra step involved here in just taking those shared parameters and making sure that they actually are applied to the project. I stay on the Manage tab to do that, and just above Shared Parameters you can see Project Parameters. I'll click there, and in the Project Parameters window that pops up, I'm just going to click on Add. I'm going to specify shared parameter, and that requires then that I click on select and go to this extra window. And this is where I can choose the ones that I've just created. I'll start with facade and click OK. And I'm going to do this 5 times. I'm going to select each of those 5 shared parameters that I created. And in each case, I'm just going to make sure that it's an instance parameter. I'm also going to change this option down below here so that each of them can be values that vary. And I'll just accept whatever the default is in this window. For some of them, it's going to be text. For some of them, it's going to be something related to the area. So I'll leave that one alone. Again, just make sure it's on instance. Choose the second option, values can vary. And then over here on the right in the categories for each of them, each of the 5, I want to just make sure that I specify detail items. Having done that, I'll click OK. Now you can see that facade is listed as a new project parameter. I'll click Add, and I'll repeat the process for the remaining 4. So here's the completed list of project parameters. So all 5 of the additional ones based on the shared parameters have now been added. And I'll click OK here, and I'm ready to start entering this information. And I can do that by selecting the filled regions. So this is what it'll look like in the end. Initially, what you'll see is that the only field that's going to be populated is the one that's grayed out here, the one that lists area. So I've actually entered manually the information in the facade field. And for that, I've just entered number 1 south, and that's going to correspond to the view title that I'll see on the sheet where I display my elevations. So 1 south. Below that, I've entered again manually the number 2000, and this would just be 2000 millimeters, and this is a number that would just come from my code, whatever my local code happens to say the limiting distance is, based on my percentage of unprotected openings. So manually entered there, and then the next one down would be the comments here. This is already going to be in that field because, of course, that's based on the comments that we had entered earlier describing that this was fire compartment 1. And then these 2 fields will be empty as well. And so to populate those, you'll want to just pull a number, again, just right from here. This seems a little redundant. It's already displayed up here in the area section, but you'll have to just manually enter 91.2 in this case. It'll automatically enter the meters squared. And then you'll repeat the process down here for the proposed unprotected opening area. That number you'll see when you click on the unprotected openings. So if I click on the unprotected openings filled region within that fire compartment, I'll see here, of course, that it's going to list 17.34 square meters. And of course, I didn't have to do that. I could have also just relied on my tag. So the tag here shows that I've got within fire compartment 1, 17.3 square meters of unprotected openings. So you don't have to actually do that extra step. You can just enter it manually, having looked at the tag. And then the last field here would be for allowable percentage openings, and I've just entered 40. This is for 40%. And like limiting distance, this is a number that I'm just going to pull off of my local code. So it just has to be looked up and entered manually. And now that that's all done, I'm ready to start building the schedule. So I have my elevations, my filled regions, my tags, my shared and project parameters, and all of my fields are properly entered with the necessary information. And with all of that in place, I'm ready to now start creating my schedule. And I'm going to do this the way that I normally do, and that is by going to the View tab and then sliding over here on the Create panel to Schedules. I'll click on the bottom part of the button and then just take the default, which is the schedule quantities. And under Category, I'm going to select Detail Items. So this was the reason that we selected or created the custom tag, so that we'd have access to information that was loaded into this category here for detail items. So I'll click OK, and then I go into the usual schedule creation process. And you can see that now all those parameters that I created are available as one of the available fields. So I'm going to start off by just looking for facade and sending it over to the right. And next I'll select type, and that's going to list the actual name of the filled region. So of course it'll say fire compartment 1, 2, or 3, and then I'll send that over to the right. Next I'm going to have my exposing building face area. I'll have my limiting distance, and I'll have my allowable openings, my allowable percentage openings, and then below that I'm going to have my proposed. So I've got those 5 based on those 6, sorry, I added the type as well. That wasn't a custom parameter that I created, so I had the 5 plus type. And I'm going to make one more schedule field here, and that's going to be created by clicking here on Add Calculated Parameter. And I do that so that I can kind of take some of the numbers that I've got displayed in different columns and then do the calculations that will show me the final percentage. And what I'm going to do here is just show the percentage symbol. And then I want to make sure that this is a formula. So just choose the radio button here for formula. And under discipline, I want this to be common. I want the type to be number. And then I have to manually enter a formula here. And I'm going to enter left bracket and then a second left bracket. I'm going to click over here on this button, and this will allow me then to select some of the parameters that I've created. So I'm going to choose proposed unprotected opening area. I'll click OK, and then I'm going to enter a forward slash, and then I'm going to click on this button again, the little button here with the 3 dots. And I'm going to choose exposing building face area. I'll click OK. And then I'm going to close this with a right side bracket. And then I'm going to type Shift number 8. So I get the little multiplication symbol here, the little asterisk. And then I'm just going to enter 100. And then I'm just going to close this with another right side bracket. And I'll click OK. So that's the formula that's going to determine for this particular column what the final percentage is. So I'm going to click OK, and it's going to take me right to that schedule. You'll see it generates it here. And then the last step is just going to be to add a bit of refinement to this so that it's a little bit more legible. So to refine the schedule, I want to start off by just clicking over here on the left on the Edit button beside Filter. And I'm going to filter this by facade. And I'm just going to make sure that I eliminate any of the fields or the rows that don't have a facade listed. So to do that, I want to just make sure here that I go down to has a value. And then again, like when I click OK, I'll see that all of the empty rows will be eliminated. So I just see rows here for the 3 fire compartments on the south, the 2 on the north, the 1 on the west, and then the 2 on the east. Having done the filtering step, I'll now go to the sorting grouping step. And I want to sort these again by facade. And I want it to be ascending, so I'll just go with the default. And I'm just going to check this box here that says blank line. And this ensures that I just have a bit of a gap between, let's say, the south and then the north facades. So I'll click OK just to show you the result of that. There's that gap. So just kind of helping with the legibility here, just a bit of a separation between each of these sort of relevant facades. Having done that, I'll now go to Formatting. I'll click on the Edit button beside Formatting, and I'm just going to make a simple switch here and just make sure that each of these is aligned to center. And I suppose I could grab these all together and just set them all to be center aligned. Now you'll see just that little sort of graphic enhancement. And remember that when you're in this view, you can just click on the line between the two column headers, and you'll be able to drag that across to generate a little bit more space if you need to see if you've got text that's being cut off by that. Having done the formatting, now I'll move on to the last one, which would be under Appearance. I'll click on Edit, and this is where I just specify the line types and then the font types that I want to see used in the schedule. And so I like to add the stripe rows, and I'm just going to add a slight gray tone here so that every other row has a little bit of a darker color to it. Just kind of helps with legibility, I find. So I'll add the stripe row with a little bit of gray, and then I'm going to change the title text to 4mm, the header text to 3.5, and then the body text I'm going to set at 2.5, and I'll click OK, and now I've got something that looks a little bit more organized. I can change the name, of course, by just right-clicking here in the project browser. I can see that the detail item schedule has been listed, and I can just right-click on that, and I can call this my Limiting Distance Calculations. And there we go. So the last step is just to drag it onto your sheet. So I'm just going to double-click here on my code compliance sheet, and then I would do a simple drag and drop. Clicking here, dragging and releasing, and then the last step in the process is just to make some graphic refinements here so that I've got it properly aligned and a little bit more legible. And I'll just jump quickly to what that might look like in the end. And I've got it completed in this file, and you can see the end result where I've just made an attempt to kind of line things up. That is the whole process. So many steps involved, and the end result is that we've got, again, as I kind of stated in the beginning, a display here of our code compliance with regards to limiting distance and spatial separation and unprotected openings. And it's been done in a way that we kind of combined elevations and the schedule. We've got all of our relevant data nicely organized. And over here on the right, you can see that we've got a representation of what our actual proposed percentage openings would be for each of the fire compartments within each of the facades. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hope that was helpful. Please let me know in the comments. And if that was helpful, please consider subscribing. We'll see you in future videos.